So I've got this theme, cultivating a heart of loving kindness and compassion by transforming the heart away from selfishness, egoism and greediness, away from being uncaring. So one of the ways the Buddha was starting his talks was to talk about, first of all, Dāna, and then talking about Sīla. He would always encourage people to reflect about the physical giving and the kindness in the world, firstly, before moving on towards Sīla, morality, and then moving on to the higher meditation. So reviewing last week, I introduced us conquer the stingy by generosity and the liar by speaking the truth, which is verse 223. And I'd been introducing some of the work in the Philippines, which was following this, where actually stinginess is one of the causes of the problem, the corruption in the government, but that's rooted in a lot of independent families basically stealing the money of the country. So it's a form of stinginess too. So the following one, verse 224, says, one should speak the truth, one should not yield to anger, one should give when asked, even if it is only a little. By means of these three, one may go to the world of the angelic heaven of the devas. And one should give when asked, even if it is only a little. It also can apply if someone is very the dependent, clingy, greedy type, asking for again and again. Sometimes you can give them wisdom in return instead of just complying and giving. So just to qualify that came up in discussion in the week. But yeah, this very important point. One should give when asked, even when it's only a little. And that gives the heart the habit of treating things as fluid. They come to you, they go, easily coming, easily going. And also, but injecting in there the discriminatory wisdom about what you give and why you give and to whom. So a little bit of mini bit of background. This is to do with the timeline of my monkhood. It started in 1986 and stopped in 1989 after 3 years. And then I went the road to the world for 23 years. And 2010, I reordained in Malaysia and chose a Samanera ordination. Here's my first, my preceptor on the left, Ajahn Tong. In the middle, Lumpur Banyat, and one of his assistant, Kun Tanat, who was, all of these three people were a big influence on introducing me. And then on my second ordination, my preceptor, Venerable Dhammaratana on the right, and Mahatera Punyaji, Madhawala Punyaji, who spent 40 years in the States and Canada teaching and has a very sort of dynamic and innovative approach to things. And then many of the Burmese masters, Mahasi Sayadaw on the left, influenced me very much. I personally practiced with U Pandita and U Thuzana, and so this was Sayadaw U Silananda, and he was actually Mahasi Sayadaw's personal driver for many years after being a skin specialist in Austria. And then he ordained, and he was very, very good at, I bombarded him with questions. He gave me kind of carte blanche to just fire away with anything. So for 8 months, I just peppered him with tons of questions, which was a really good opportunity to get lots of background. Another big influence on me was the Mahāyāna nun in Taiwan, who started the Tzu Chi Foundation. And she minimizes the importance of meditation, maximizes the importance of action, and has done a great deal of good in the world. And she's actually quite a good, very good meditation teacher as well. She does actually teach a lot of good meditation. Ajahn Brahm, lately, been a very big influence, obviously. So, this is going to be a little section like last week about the stuff that happened in the Philippines with efforts to introduce Buddhism per se, but also realizing that that wasn't just going to work just like that. If you just went in and started teaching meditation in some of those areas, it wasn't really going to take. But the humanistic approaches were very much in order there. So this was during this period, 2012 to 2017, on and off. I did go out for visa reasons and things to Taiwan and to Malaysia and to Singapore a little bit. And again, emphasizing this is not a fundraising talk. and I don't touch money currently. And this project was in an area of Puerto Princesa city called Westcom. It's called Western Command. It's right next to the airport, but it was a very poor suburb just next to that, which is like a half an hour drive from the airport. So occasionally people will still request, and I will direct them to friends who are happy to help them out in various different ways according to what they need. So again, like this thing of your intention and aim on all of your spiritual practice are very important. So the heart went to where that area is, which is Puerto Princesa city. That's where the planes come in there onto the island from Manila. So there's a city there of about 2 million people, but they're scattered over a large area. And the area I was at looked like this. So that would, at the end of that row where the light is would be a beach area. Goes right along, and there's a community of about 500 families based there. Or it was basically a shanty town. And then you have lots of little houses dotted around these, that they're meant to be sort of curators of the palm plantations. So I rented an area of 300 square meters when I realized that there wasn't really anywhere to dwell. And I started setting up the boundary and using this guy Jomar as a builder. So I showed him basically the photograph of one of the stupas at the Shwedagon Pagoda in Myanmar, and said about constructing this, which he just did from the photo, essentially. There is his doing architectural plan. So later on, I found that there was a sort of community hall area where it was just a house, but it was suitable for a community hall that I could rent actually inside the shanty town. But the whole idea of this was to have a peaceful place that was in the forest, that was far from any traffic and was doable. But construction is a headache, and you don't get much peace in those in reality when you start doing it. And you also get moral dilemmas, I found. Whereas I was going on an alms round every morning, around about 25 families every morning. So they would donate, fill my bowl up plus more. And you would see a lot of illness and sickness amongst those families, but I was receiving money to build, concrete, buy concrete and all the different things like the umbrella or stuff like that. And that was quite difficult sometimes decision to make. Someone would need blood bank, liters of blood for an operation, and I was setting off to buy 12 bags of cement, and should I use the money for this or just help them out? Because often those were life or death things. So these are some of the people, but typically on a day like this would be a Sunday, and they would all come round and they would share all of this. So this is what evolved, was this sort of community centre, and they got a lot of access to equipment, and there was basically like a toy library, like boxes and boxes full of toys for the kids, which wouldn't otherwise would have them. That started off when I noticed some kids just had a broken bit of stick and a stone, and that was the only toys that they had. And I started to realise that, how much of a privileged upbringing I'd had, including things like National Health Service, which they don't have there. This is Ella Aprecia. She has this ichthyosis condition, which is genetic. And we organised her and linked her, so this is like the outcome. We linked her to a university in Malaysia that develops a skin product. I think it's coming up actually. Yeah, a skin product made from red palm oil, which is a special kind of palm tree, and it combines beta-carotene and it has a strong beta-carotene, which is like beetroot and carrots. So the oil gets inside, has to be taken, you have to drink it, so it's pretty yucky. But they put it down. She puts it down with bananas, mashed bananas and stuff, and that solves a lot of the problem. And then this is aloe vera, so it's a topical skin lotion. So the combination of the internal help and the external help, after sort of things to deal with the infections and stuff, because it's very cracked and bleeding, and stuff. So this was the at first before I linked to the. I get like virgin coconut oil was a typical thing, and then some ointments just to deal with the infections. And this was under advice of, I had a chat group with about 13 doctors, and they would, in their spare moments, just log on and sort of check in with me, through photos, and they would all advise in. So I wouldn't take anything on or sort of pretend to be a doctor or anything like that. I would just pass on and make connections. So that's Liao Min. She's the head of this Director of Operations at University Putra, Malaysia. She was the one who said that. It was as an ongoing thing, by the way. So this is like about 5 years ago, plus by now. No, about 5 years ago. And since then, every month or so, she's been sending supplies. It's just like that university department's been doing it. And her Ella's aunt collects it and takes it over. And she recently messaged me to say that she's going to visit as well. So that was all great. And also I asked Ella for permission to show the pictures just last week, and she said yes. So this is another one. Ameloblastoma is a rare, non-cancerous, benign tumour that develops, and it just keeps growing. It's just dead. In itself, it's not cancerous, like it's not aggressive in that sense, but it just keeps growing, and it usually affects the jaw and inner molars. Ameloblastoma begins in the cells that form the protective enamel lining on the teeth. Most common type of ameloblastoma is aggressive, forming a large tumour and growing into the jawbone. So this was when I first met Felicidad on the left-ish, around that time. And there was a case of a boy who had hair lip, split lip. And because of that, I'd organised for him to be sent to Manila to get a free operation for that. No, it was the other way around. They sent someone, and that was with a craniofacial charity who specialise in craniofacial. So I contacted them after that case, and I said, "Would you be prepared to take on the case of Felicidad?" And I also contacted a family of Malaysians who are quite wealthy, and said, "Would you be the backup for this? If anything goes wrong with the charity, or they suddenly pull out at the last minute, anything, will you be our financial cushion, just ready to step in?" Which it was exactly what happened. The surgeons were pretty nasty and suspicious and thought they weren't going to get paid, and the charity were dancing around a bit as well. And fortunately, we were able to go in, because it's involving titanium. Because like where she's been fixed, when they remove that, it removes a lot of the jaw. So titanium has to be going. It's one of the only metals that will link to the bones happily. So the result was, towards the end, she was this is a picture when she was just about to go on the bottom left. She could almost not eat or drink. So it was very dangerous. That was really getting to the point where it was life or death. And so that was great. It was a satisfying thing to see that it all worked out. These things do not always work out in those conditions, with very sketchy internet and very difficult communications and just a lot of things, a lot of different issues. So they don't always go that smoothly. But this was a really, really good case.
What was the timeline of that?
About 7 or 8 months from the beginning to the end.
Very good.
Ish. They can see how fast it grows then, that space of time. So this was during another case where I came round in the morning to one regular house, and one of the girls who's the same mate, that's not her, that's Bernalyn, but another girl, Jenny and Claridad, she'd been doing the family cooking with a big pan of water, and dropped it just down her leg. So all the skin and everything had gone, and the whole leg looked like a cheeseburger. It was a really, really bad shape. That was actually at one of these forest meetings where all the families would come and sit in a big circle. She walked past me, and I just went, ugh. And that was pre-doing anything. At that point, I was meditating it all away, and I just went, what happened? And she told me, and I said to the mum, what are you putting on it? And she said, toothpaste. And I said, well, why are you putting toothpaste on? She goes, we haven't got anything else. And I was like, this is wrong, you know. So around that time, I started to shift from just, like I say, kind of meditating everything away and think about doing something. So this was the one of those first actions. After that, when I realised that I think in the centre or at the build site, I'd bought one of these or got someone to go and buy one for the workers who were building, and I thought, well, that would be pretty easy to do again, you know. And we're getting all the money for construction coming in. Well, I can spare some off to buy some of these things, which were quite cheap, and they kind of. So that was an example of starting off. Then there was the sort of Sunday school, and it was like before they could get their porridge and stuff, we'd get them to read out this, which is in Tagalog. It's produced by Tsuchi. So they're all little, like they're basically like little Dhammapada, little lines, like the ones we've been hearing. And they would all, one would stand up and read to the other ones. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, this was how the construction going. I'll be able to show you this just in stages and phases as it goes. Not necessarily in the right timeline. It's quite difficult because I've got about 30,000 photos from these 5 years, right, combing through it all. I was introduced to Gloria Calderon, and she had developed spinal cancer, and she died within the space of about a year and a half. So she went from a completely healthy person to, when I met her, like her leg was about that thick, for example. So it just ripped through her life, just completely destroyed life. So one of the problems there was the hospital had said, go home, we can't do anything for you. The second problem was I saw the home, which is basically a pig farm, and her bed and everything was just open to the elements, just open, and there was just mud all around it. So I said, well, I can stop my worker guys and we can rent a little cottage, which is pretty much how it looked on the right, just rent a little cottage. And I'd seen what the hospital's like. Hospital is completely commercial there. You pay like a hotel per day. So many families and everything cannot afford to do that. And then they will ask them if they got any land or anything as a form of payment. So it's a really predatory kind of unfair scheme. So I got the builders to basically white out a room with everything and put an aircon in, and she lived out her days like that. She lived for about another 4 months, and surviving when there was the neighbouring house burned down. Anyway, there's too much, not enough time really to be able to tell you everything that happened in all these cases. The bamboo bank was teaching about saving, cleaning up the beach, and rewarding them as well. So this was obviously very popular with their families and amongst everyone. Otherwise, it was very difficult to get motivation. Constructive educational toys, which usually ended up looking something a bit like this sort of stuff. And pumps. Those are the kind of things they really appreciated and were really on their wavelength as well. Then there was teaching of, the next stage is Sīla, teaching the moral precepts. So I would do this on a regular basis, like almost every day basically. Preschoolers and schoolers and on holiday kids, they would all make use of the sort of front area of the courtyard of the place that I rented. And then people like Jeremiah, they are very responsible. Kids like that are grown up taking care of their younger kids who are often they're in stepping stone families, 1 year apart, 9 or 10 or 11 kids in a family, very low income families. So teaching them the precepts and Theravāda, which is advice for lay people. Okay, so let's move on to the Bhāvanā. Dāna, Sīla, Bhāvanā. This is one of the ways recommended, Buddha recommended. So Bhāvanā means development, cultivating, producing, calling into existence. And it's a vital activity in Buddhist practice. It's the patipatti. So Bhāvanā normally appears in conjunction with another word, like Chitta Bhāvanā or Metta Bhāvanā, developing the mind or developing loving kindness. Used on its own, it means spiritual cultivation. So there's two parts, theory plus practice, and then actual realization. And they say that theory without practice is a waste of time, And practice without theory is risky, because you don't know really what you're doing. So they should go together. So this is in Pali, pariyatti and patipatti equals pativeda. Pariyatti is theory, patipatti is practice. I won't read it all because time is slipping away a little bit here. So this is a little bit of a review. And the reason for doing this is it helps you to build up a clear cognitive understanding of experience. The first foundation of mindfulness. And this is just, I decided to introduce some animation just to keep it interesting. Doesn't really mean anything. So often we're going to talk about the first foundation of mindfulness, which is the body. And you also have anapanasati, which focuses just only on the breathing. Anapana, breathing in, breathing out. Mindfulness of breathing in and breathing out. Some people will prefer to just stay there, and it's quite enough. For other people, also they'll go on to practice mindfulness of the body. So this can include the arms and the legs and the feet and the belly and the chest and the shoulders. And when you look directly with your mind's experience at those areas, you see that there are those experiences. There's moving, there's hardness and absence of hardness. There's moving and not moving. There's hardness and absence of hardness. Temperature warm, temperature cool, sponginess and not, and hard. And then it becomes the hardness. And these are called the four great elements. Mahabhuta. So I also wanted to clarify and extend a little bit about this. So if we put these in different colour just for now, just for this purpose, the four elements are usually together and one of them predominates. So I want to be able to use graphics to be able to explain this. So if you look at your foot or an area of your foot, you'll notice that most of those things are there, maybe not moving. But hardness, absence of it, but there, sponginess will be there, but maybe the temperature is the predominant one. Or another place of your body, sponginess will be predominant. There's also temperature there, there's also hardness, maybe there's moving. For example, if you take the experience of a foot, you might feel something like that, but when you press on the floor, then it will change. The hardness will start to appear. So this is how the four elements are in personal experience. So I just wanted to clarify that about the four elements. There are also other things like taking into consideration the posture, also these minor movements like blinking and sniffing and swallowing. And then there are also conceptual meditations using the body, the anatomical body that you would see, in an anatomy class, with all of the organs inside. Also, a decaying corpse can be enlightening, and focusing on the unbeautiful aspects of the body instead of our bias towards that. Hair of the head, hair of the nails, teeth, skin is included in the ordination just to make you think clearly about the material body as opposed to that. So another important, as opposed to the mental part of experience, an important part of meditation success is having the aim or the intention lined up, sama sankappa, to see and accept the changing nature of all of experience. And this can be seen in the physical body, for example, like this, by reflecting on the impermanent nature of the body, directly perceiving the impermanent nature of the physical body is a key to insight. Never stops happening all through life. And these self-perceptions and passing wishes that change through life as well. The different things we value. Observe its impermanence. Observe also our inability to control it, for it to be as we wish. And acknowledge its nature to age. And to experience unpleasing sensations. These are a given. And then all through life as well, we're all putting on lots of different acts and lots of different roles that we take in life. And this is always changing all through our life. And also we have the non-stop functioning and activity of the mind. So observe its impermanence, how we're always adopting different identities, wearing acts, changing selves, endlessly planning, or maybe regretting and thinking, and that goes on and on and on. And then also external, we can contemplate external objects. Internally and externally, the nature of material, rupa, is that it is affected by heat and time. So this is also reminds us that it's through the mental aggregate that we are able to find true freedom. But contemplation of impermanence, such as you'll see here with the crowds leaving from Wembley Stadium in England and the police standing still on their horses. The external is also made up of people and events and objects that will all pass away. That also helps us to develop right view, not to be attached. And then also even our planet and its role in the bigger scheme of things. So today's second foundation of mindfulness, I'll try and move through it quickly enough. Second foundation of mindfulness, this is the feelings. I'll qualify what's meant by feelings. Vedana is meaning the experience of pleasantness or unpleasantness, and also neutral, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. So on our map, which you can also photograph out here, by the way, it's on the tables, body can have neutral right up to pleasant experiences and right down to very unpleasant experiences. Mind also can get very pleased and have a pleasant experience and down to unpleasant experience. So I put these other things in like disappointed and troubled to show there's a spectrum. Sometimes the Buddha referred to like 12 variations, as it gets more. Sometimes he just used 3. So it just shows there's a spectrum of both. The thrills and the pleasures of life and the stormy moods and so on. So let's ask ourselves how are we going to use this? How may it be useful? And how may a person apply it in daily life as well? So being able to have strong mindfulness of Vedana, of feelings, means you can have more impulse control, going to be able to resist unwise intentions and habits, increased capacity to wisely reflect, increased irritation tolerance. It can help you reduce stress and anxiety, observe feelings without chasing them and without judgment. You can practice observing how feelings are often inaccurate. So you might just have this feeling that person can't be trusted. That can just be a feeling, it can be completely wrong. So you can practice how these shadows or feelings come up as well. So also you can increase your ability to understand, recognize and accept your emotional experiences because they pass. It can also help alleviate stress by improving emotion regulation and also leading to a better mood and better ability to handle stress. I use these books here in schools in Philippines. There's about 80 of them, and they were all kinds of books that were designed using mindfulness to help teens with different factors of their life, whether it's sleep or eating or bullying, but all of them, they used similar mindfulness and CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, together, combined. And I thought this was one really practical, useful usage that you can say this is a concrete example of how it can be practically applied. Time on the cushion is time being able to filter and process a lot of those experiences. And how about in meditation? Well, we had to look at the 4 elements earlier. So on top of that, you're now going to have another layer to look at. So we're not just, if you're looking at your foot, whatever, you're not just looking at the temperature anymore, but there's pain there, or there's tension, or there's a release of tension. And as you relax, often you get muscles popping, or, relaxing suddenly. So there's another layer over the 4 great elements. So when you're looking at something like the foot, you can be noticing the sponginess and the hardness, but you've got another level that can be the mindfulness can zone in on, whether it's pleasant or whether there's pain or whether there's neutral. So you've got a whole different spectrum overlayered on top of the other one. This is a very important thing. This is really emphasized in the Burmese schools, which is mentally noting. However, after a lot of practicing, a lot of it, I found that if you prefix your experience with the noting awareness of, it makes much more sense. Usually they will do like reaching, touching, standing, bending. They do like that, 3 notations, and it's all like a verb. I found that when you're actually tracking your experience of the sitting, if you say awareness of irritation, it makes more sense. It's kind of what the mind is actually doing. So a little joke for you, if you haven't got irritation, often that's like what actually goes on inside. You've got a really itchy bit of skin, and your mind's going bonkers, just going like, get rid of it. So I thought I'd throw a little bit of light-hearted stuff just in. But what you really want to look like is that what most people look like in the meditation hall. Internally, they probably look like the bear. So also, mentally noting awareness of things like awareness of release of tension. That's a bit of a mouthful, but you get the idea. Is awareness of, tension in the body. And the same applies also for mind pleasure or displeasure. Mentally noting awareness of one of the range of things that your mind can be on the pleasure and displeasure scale. Awareness of irritation, awareness of disappointed, awareness of pleased, awareness of irritation, mental irritation, awareness of pain. So now we're on the body and we're now on the mind, different things. Awareness of excited. Okay, so now we've got 2 foundations of mindfulness. We're going to be introducing, because you can't just have the body. If you notice, that body doesn't say anything, doesn't have any mouth or speech, and it doesn't have any ears, it doesn't have any eyes. It's just a blob of just flesh. So it doesn't have the 6 sense doors yet, which often leads to the feelings on the body and feelings of the mind. So that will be, we'll be coming up to that. So last week you were asking, where do you read about this in the words of the Buddha? It's something that frequently people want to check out by themselves. So you should search for the word Vedana, is one way to do it. So this thing here is a map that I personally made during my travels of most of the things that you need to know. I will be going into it and explaining about it. But first of all, some resources that many of you know very well. So I just want to introduce about how to use some of them. The digital Pali reader is really good for searching for these things. If you search for the word Vedana there, this bit up here shows you the books like the Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya, and Gutta Nikaya, like that. And here's where you put something in a search engine. And these are all the examples. And up on there it says Vinaya 318, Digha Nikaya 89. That's how many times that word shows up in that book. I'll show you what I mean.
Question.
Go ahead.
Are you recording this, or is it just for? Okay, so this I don't have to be writing down notes.
No.
I can see it another way.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it will go up on YouTube and last week's as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, for example, here you've got this Kāya, those books there. I made this kind of mini website for myself, but this shows you how the long stories, it shows up 89, medium stories, and to make it a bit clearer, DN is Kāya, that's the long, MN is Majjhima, it's medium, and so on. And this map thing you'll be seeing a little bit more of because it's the best way that I can find to make it visible. Access to insight has a button under Tibetica called subject. So the subject we're looking at is Vedana, is experience, is feeling. So when you hit that button, you get a page that looks like this, and it has an A to Z or an A to Z for Lawrence of there. So it comes up, and then you're just going to click on the V, and the V will take you to there. And then it's got a list of all of the books and the places in the books, which if you just click on the MN9, it will open up and it will show you that. So back to my thing, which is a bit more visual and a bit less library-ish. So we're going to look at some of those now, very briefly. I'll trot on because I know time's clicking. So, for example, in that grouped one, it's often called connected or kindred, but as I was saying, grouped, that's what they mean, they're clubbed together. In there, we have, let me just tell you what the Sangha is. It's in the other room, it looks like this. It's a book, you can open it up and browse it. And it's on the shelf and it's for reference, and you're very welcome. It looks like that on the front. That's the Bhikkhu Bodhi version. So when you open it up, you start seeing the chapters. That means, the book with verses. Second one, causation and aggregates. 6 sense bases. In there is what we're looking for. The Vedana Sangha, connected discourses on feeling. So that's where it goes. And when you look at that in the grand scheme of things, it's the 4th one, and I've just made that more visual. So there's the 36th book is called Vedana on feeling. So these are the kind of thing the Buddha really talked about. That's what he really taught. So if we tuck that back in its library there and move on, I want to show you why it's worth looking into some of those things and doing a little bit of reading. So here's an example of a sutta from there. It's called the guest house. Because it's of time, in a guest house, people from the east may take lodgings, or people from the west, north or south. Military people may come, like aggressive feelings, and take lodgings there, and then they'll go. Also, wealthy people, like beautiful feelings, they come and then they go. Middle class people and low income people, really mean feelings come and go. So similarly, there arise in the body various kind of feelings. There arises pleasant feelings, neutral feelings, and so on. You'll have an illustration of this. So when you look at this, he's got this image, the Buddha's come up with this image of a guest house, which is a brilliant simile. And then he's put it in a kind of guest house like this. And then he's compared that to what happens when you're meditating. Like all those feelings that arise when you're in your meditation. And then he's put all of the things together. It's ingenious. That's the sort of brilliance of the Buddha. The feelings are like, and if you ever sit there and you just consider that's what you're experiencing, that all these things come and dwell for a bit, then disappear, dwell for a bit. You don't own them and they don't own you. So another vivid simile from the book is this one, Akasa Sutta. And long sitters, people who sit for a long time, this really makes sense that when you sit there, the feelings rise and fall like winds blowing across the sky. So this is an image of some winds blowing across the skies. And if you go back to the quote, feelings rise and fall like winds blowing across the skies, and you kind of superimpose them. Often this is the feeling you get, the experience of feelings. And that's how transient they are. And just one more from the same book. There's a very important one called the dart or the arrow. When shot by the arrow of physical pain, an unwise person makes matters worse by piling mental anguish on top of it, just as if you've been shot by 2 arrows. A wise person feels the sting of 1 arrow alone, just a sense basis. So when pain arises, so unpleasant and disappointing trouble, all that can be stirred up, and you add multiply it on top of it, and making things much worse and worse. You get the pain in the first place, but then on top of it, all of this dramas and massive, on and on and on, making it worse and worse and worse, non-stop. So back to the thing. So what's the advice on that? The advice on that is when the pain comes, is stay neutral. Don't add to it. Like the guy on the bed, he seems pretty calm. So, but on the other hand, what often happens is motel hell. So you get more than the feelings arriving. You're making bad situations worse. That's often the state of play. Okay, which turns it into motel hell. Okay, so then, just to round off, that next week we're going to look at the 6 sensations. That will be our next topic. And these slot in there in between body and mind. It kind of sounds like to me like a Motown group, the 6 sensations. There you go. Oh, just on cue. Thank you very much. That would be the 6 temptations. And that's enough cinema for one night. So I think we'll get the team to move that off. Not going to abuse the privilege of the television. Okay, so next week we're going to be going on with sense contact, which I've squeezed in. And normally 6 senses appear on the 4th foundation, like way over there, kind of divorced from your body. So I think it makes more sense to squish them in there. And then we'll be having a look about those on the next one, which won't be next week because that will be Ajahn Pasadara, I think it is. He'll be here next Monday talking about his experiences in Sri Lanka. I believe I'll be doing the Monday after that. And thank you very much. So let's wind our session up with meditation. I've gone a bit over time. I do apologise. So if we can, have the lights. So I like what Stephen had said on his talks about just most of you have got your own practice and just sort of go with it. I'll do just a little bit of guidance for if anyone's new. I recommend focusing on your breathing in and breathing out at the nose, and if you wish to, follow the breath down and anchor it in the lungs and lower belly. But if you're happy staying in the nose area, very good. Let's just stay there. feeling we might have the same problems we had on the other one. We might have. Are you okay going with this? Is that the English? That's what I'm on about.
No.
Different.
Different.
Yeah, it would be. Should we go with the green for this time? Next time I'll sort it out. To be honest, I'll do the Pali and follow. Imina punya kamena upajaya gunutara. By this act of merit, may my highly virtuous preceptors, Ajari upakaracha, mata pita chanyataka, piyamama, teachers, benefactors, mother, father, and my dear relatives, Suryo Chandi Maharaja, Gunawanta Narapicha, the sun, the moon, the leader-in-chief, virtuous people, Brahma Maharaja Injacha, Lokapala cha Devata, high gods and guardian angel devas, devas who are protectors of the earth, Yamo Mita Manusacha, Machata Virikapicha, Yama, human beings friendly, neutral and hostile. Sabe Satta Sukhi Hontu, Punyani Pakatani Me, Sukhang Chatti Vidang Dentu, Kipang Papeta Wo Matang. May all beings be happy. May the meritorious deeds done by me give threefold happiness in this life, in future lives and liberation. May you all quickly attain your wish. Imina punya kamenya, imina udisena cha. Through this act, through this dedication, kipahang sulabe chewa, tanupadana chedanam. May I quickly and easily reach the cutting through of craving and clinging. Ye santane hina dhamma, yawa nibbanato mama, nasantu sabada yewa, yata jato bhawe bhawe. As long as I am on the way to unbinding, may any low qualities in my character be entirely destroyed. Wherever I am born in one state of becoming after another, Uju Chittang Satipanya Saleko Viryamina. May I have an upright mind, mindfulness, discernment, strictness, persistence. Mara Labantu no Kasang Katuncha Virye Sume. And through my efforts, may Maras have no chance to do anything to me. Buddhadi pavaro nato, Dhammo nato arutamo, nato pacheka buddhocha, Sango nato taro mama. The Buddha is my foremost mainstay, the Dhamma my excellent high mainstay. A private Buddha is my mainstay, the Sangha my superior mainstay. Te sota manupawena, maroka sanglabantuma. Through these superior powers, may Maras get no opportunity. Okay. It's that time of it's that time again. Okay, that's right. Thank you everyone for running. We run around quite far over time, but I hope it's worth it.
Please don't worry about that.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
You know, in the meditation when you say noting,
Awareness of, yeah.
do you have to say awareness of, or do you just note, like irritation?
I think it helps line up what you're actually doing when you're noting. Because if you're just saying irritation, you can just be saying like, I don't like that irritation. The idea is that you're aware of the irritation. And awareness is one thing and the irritation is the other. So it helps, I find if you prefixes it makes it more like mindfulness and not just like, my leg's hurting. It could be, that doesn't really help. And it doesn't establish mindfulness. The idea is that. And then, I mean, the idea is like musical training that, when you're first learning a piano, you have to mentally say it's C, and it's C sharp, and after a while that happens naturally. The noting mind, your mindful mind of it comes up with that awareness of thing. But the mental noting can be dropped after a lot of training it. Good question.
Those lines of how you can have an order, but you can not lose track of the order, but you realize it's all apart. And the sense that you're going from body, well, actually you're going on the screen, body, mind.
Yeah, feelings,
and then that sense of awareness of the outside, not as an object, but as from this it seems very, I say this respect, I don't have the words for it, very self-centered, right? But if you get away from that self-centeredness, you're a part of a community, a whole.
Yeah, this is common.
And there's nothing, I didn't see anything in your charts to indicate that whole that's other.
Yeah. The third foundation of mindfulness shows how the self-centered part is a mind state, one of 14 other mind states. And that's one of the primary ones we're hoping to dissolve. So, like the main intention thing I was saying at the beginning, away from self-centeredness and away from uncaringness as well. So this is a method of dissolving the self-centered style of reference. Particularly like that one, like when you do awareness of tension, it's not like I'm feeling tense. It's the opposite of that. It's starting to neutralize and it's starting to make objective experience. From that, we can get to an unself-centered. Because if you do a lot of charity work, if you do a lot of social work, and you've got a strong ego, and you don't have any way yet of dissolving it, so that's also going to be a problem. So this is part of, on the cushion, helping to dissolve the ego, and then put it into action in the marketplace, in the world.
What do you mean by on the cushion?
Meditating.
Oh.
This is meditation practice to dissolve and remove the ego and see that there isn't a lasting, permanent self. So that's also often people who haven't meditated, who haven't done any introspection, are running with an assumption that me, I'm just going to go down, I'm going to help these people. And it can be over-relational. It can be too much self-involved. It can be too you and me-ness, too much you and me-ness. So there's like large collectives, there's groups and circles of people, there's triads and there's pairs and working in pair work, there's working on your own, and it's very much on your own, but then there's dissolve self, and this is where this is going, where a lot of relational work can't go, where you have to start going, your relation to your own sensations, your own body, and start to get into very deep dissolved stuff, where there's dissolved self, which is different. And that can be have a very lasting effect and a paradigm shift when you talk about care work or relational. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, I realize it.
But
we could spend a lot of time there, possibly. But
the next talk will be on the third foundation of mindfulness. Until now, the non-self aspect, the dissolving of self, and seeing how the mind, which is doing the awareness part, can also then have its whole foundations taken away, which is like, I am the body, then my feelings. That is one of the big paradigm shifts when you start working with that. But that starts on the next one, beginning of it. also the whole part at the beginning, Dāna, the giving part, and morality. That's very much supposed to emphasize that. If you're practicing with a self-centered intention to start off with, it won't work out. It won't benefit or backfire. And it's really important that before you take the cushion or before you take a meditation practice, to really have that intention to benefit everyone, to benefit other people, and to be of service and to be of goodness. To be an agent for good. And then your meditation can really progress. But people are like really on. It's just about self-improvement and it's all about them. It won't really work. Won't go very far because the mindfulness really won't blossom. It won't really clarify the mind. As long as you're thinking with a lot of self in there, the mind will be fuzzled, confused, clouded, and entangled.
If you come from the other direction, from non-self, it can. I'm talking. Coming the other direction, right? And if most people, it's hard to know where people in this room or in this Perth, where most is, type of thing. But it seems most people are coming from a self and out. And some of the visuals you showed were very, very illustrative of the impermanence of things. But coming from that non-self towards the self, that's kind of the way I'm coming at this. But that can sound all good, and it's getting at these masks, and you mentioned shadow, that I've heard people talk about before, and that sense that people, if you act good, you're compassionate, and various things like, well, this is a mask. But what if that's your real self?
A lot of time in this practice, the two things are brought together. One is taking on systematic practices, systematically giving food or systematically helping or systematic. A lot of it is done just by, like our monks' rules, they just sort of kind of follow my leader sort of thing. During the time that you're practicing doing that, you're not doing anything bad with your physical actions, and generally they're very harmless things that you're asked to do. All the time you're developing the view, clarity of view, clarity of vision. So you're not expected to instantly get those things, but you keep investigating it over time, and all the time you're disentangling the bond of the ego all that time. So they go together. So there's an extent of fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it.
Oh,
like you know, like
you should get into Pali there.
Like I mean, that's not Pali. That's
sorry.
Faking it until you fake it until you make it.
Yeah.
Is acting, very, very, very mindfully and acting, but internally your internal world is taking a sort of reboot and a shift. And also all the time that you're practicing like that, you go through. There are stages as well, 4 primary stages. The first one is in seeing that there really isn't a self. This comes through the practice, is like where you keep trying to chase that self that you're trying to get rid of, and you find that it's an illusion. The second one is giving up doubts that the practice really works. That falls away, and you start seeing, well, this is really checking out. It works very, very well. It's very comprehensive. And then a lot of the other things that we were doing previously to find deep peace and truth really don't work so well. So there's a lot of abandoning of sort of rituals and different practices that are a bit empty. So that the first stage, called stream entry, that tends to be the effects of that, is really seeing the non-self very, very clearly. So it involves giving up a lot of views previously about who I really was, who I really will be, who I really am. You can see that a lot of those hence the sort of head shave and the clothing, a lot of those those masks and a lot of the different costumes you were wearing before, they were totally empty. I can just drop them and they're not the real me. And then the second level is to do with weakening the strength of desires and angers that were previously very, very strongly bonded to the previous lifestyle. That gets weakened but not totally eradicated. It's like having a cartwheel where some of the spokes have been knocked out. It's not quite as strong as it was. It's sort of, Ajahn Brahm calls it like a railway train, this runaway railway train, but that starts to get slowed down. And then third stage is really, really dissolving of the deep desires and deep, even for pleasant rebirths in really, really beautiful places, and some of the longer resentments. And then the fourth stage is ego is completely blown out. There's no more arrogance or pride or self, what do you call that, national pride or something like that, of place and belonging. So it goes by degrees.
You saw what you shared about your life in the Philippines. There was some of it was graphic. It was hard for me to look at, but I accept that. But there was the joy of the action that you took, and I haven't seen that side of Buddhism much myself. So it was really good to see that.
Yeah, me too.
And I wanted to say thank you and great type of thing.
No, me too.
But then my mass said no, don't share that.
No, it's fine.
Because this is a setting where you don't do that, and but it's a good thing. It's like being happy that people are doing the right thing. Is that hanging?
I think it's to do with the nature of Nibbana, which is the real aim of Buddhism, being beyond black and white, being beyond good and bad. That's a lot. It has a lot to do with that, because that's in a way low-hanging fruit. So this is very high fruit, and it's difficult to attain. And I was practicing that to attain the Nibbanic path and all the intensive meditation.
Nice to have fruit when it's high and low.
It's much harder to do that. It's very difficult to do meditative attainment. And for me, it was like a huge relief to suddenly just be able to hand medicines to people and go, whew. Before I was used to people bowing up saying complicated meditation questions that were really difficult to explain and justify. But they're nonetheless very real. But when things are just much more black and white, like people just go away. They're happy and everyone's happy and you look good. So that's the flip side is that the Buddhism, the real fruit of it is very subtle. It was described in King Milinda's Questions, a really good book, between a dialogue between a king and a monk. It's as if the Buddha had tasted water, and then he was able to say, that comes from a bit from the Ganges, and there's a little bit from the Yamuna River, and there's a little bit from here, and then 13% of it comes from here. That's how subtly he worked that out. This stuff that I've had the luck, great fortune, privilege, just to be able to relay on. And I don't take any credit any more than I take for inventing the Apple Mac or something. That's just the brilliance of the Buddha, that it's endured to like now. It's still as fresh as a daisy, It's that clear and that relevant. And it's internally consistent. So when I ordained in 1986, there's the same techniques that I've been talking about. That's what I was taught. I'm relaying now. Much of it comes exactly back, the words that I heard at that time, by those three, the original teachers.
It's a beautiful presentation.
Thank you.
And I like how it lightens the mood of, what we do, suffer and so on, like especially seeing the visual. The graphic that you did.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, it needs to be. You need some light. I like that Ajahn Brahms brought that in, because you need people are very intense often, and they're thinking these consciousness and awareness. And with that state of mind, your mind won't be clear, and it won't be bright, and you won't have enough physical relaxation. So it's good to get some endorphins running and to get out of your ruts. We're often caught in our mental loops, and so it's good to just shake it. And if it's just the same old stuff being regurgitated, you go, yeah, it's the 5 this, the 4 there, I'll meditate now. you'll just also just go in ruts, you know. So it's good to have something a bit original, a little bit refreshing. It's like, that's the idea of the Zen jokes or the Zen one-liners. They're like supposed to get you out of your over-rationalizing. Yeah, no, thank you for your compliment. It's good. It's good to feel some support, because when I'm making this stuff, it's difficult to know exactly how it's going to go down. I've never seen other people doing this kind of thing, some kind of pioneering or whatever kind of. I'd say there's this thing about when you walk your own path, but when you look back, you can see the trail, something like that. But there is not a path in the front. It's 8:30, so it's quite hard. By the way, there are pictures of the end map that all this is building up, the sort of the jigsaw puzzle finished on the table. You can just take pictures. There's one without glass. Photo is better if you want to do that. But it's definitely good to see it built up step by step and explain how the different parts work together and things.
For me, it's good to see the whole, and then you look at the bits, because it is a whole. Well, to me, it's a whole, and you get to see the bits.
Yeah.
And I've learned that mainly as an ecologist looking at the forest, the different species type of thing. And now I just see the whole, and then I see the bits, and the bits I'm particularly interested in, type of thing. So it's good to see the whole. And when you do that, like that mind, what kind of looked like a mind map there, your map that you said, yeah. That was very interesting. To have something like the whole there type of thing, and you're going into the details, which is great.
It reminds me of something that I did in England, where they come up with this thing that some people. It's like half a tree looked at in a mirror, then you see a whole tree. But if you look at half a tree in a broken mirror, you see a whole forest. I did it on there you go, something to think about. I was thinking about, I was telling some people yesterday about, I painted a dome in Egypt. It's a long story, 350 square foot dome. And it's just impossible. They were talking about Michelangelo and the Sistine Chapel, and they said, "Oh, you're so illuminated." I said, and I was telling from my personal experience, light. Well, it's people painting ceilings. You never get any sunlight. You're the guy with white. So anyway, to paint this dome, like one of the worst things is your eye strain, because you're spending the whole day like that. And your eyes hurt like anything. You wake up in the morning and it's like really aching. You have to do it all over again. So I discovered looking at the ceiling, which was 9 floors high, and then they had the dome. So it's very high up. Looking at it in a mirror, and when you look at the mirror, it's just like reading a book. It's like easy on the eyes. And you're looking at things that are like 75 foot away, but you can sort of like look at it like that. And the image itself was the eye of Ra, and it was in the dead center, and it had like a radiance coming out from it. And the picture in the middle is, I don't know if you've seen this thing called an ankh. They have an Egyptian eye, and it has a teardrop like that. And the story was that the teardrop, because he was a tyrannical king, pharaoh at the time, and he discovered compassion. Someone had wakened him up, and as he discovered it, he started crying. And the teardrop, they say, became the source of the Nile. That was a really beautiful little allegorical thing. And this had a 8 floors long chandelier that looked like tears coming down from it. But the thing I was reminded of was the mirror. There's something allegorical in that to see this thing as a whole, you had to look at it in the mirror, and then you could see the whole thing as a whole. It's a bit complicated as far as that's good.
It's real. It's the truth.
Yeah. Want to see the picture of it?
Yes.
Because I had it out I got it out yesterday when someone on the chat asked to see it.
And you said this is on YouTube?
Yeah. That's it. So the eyes are kind of round the wrong way, but the teardrop is at the top. Anyway, it's a long story. I won't go into it all, but a lot happened at the time. All right, so let's go back to our thing. So, all right, any more? If there's no more questions, I'll wind up. Everyone looks hypnotised. Put you all in a trance. You're very welcome. Yeah, good. Thank you for your questions, Ben. Always appreciate it. They originated over there. I think they're going to end up much neater.